For September 25th, 2015, this is NewsUndies, all the news that shouldn't be news. I'm Paul Torville with these headlines. One of the most basic rules that a successful criminal should know is that you should never provide your identifying information to your victim, particularly if there is a chance your victim may survive, to relay that information to the authorities. Paul Neverson of Medway in England apparently has not taken this rule to heart. Neverson held a bank teller at knife point and demanded that she transfer money into his bank account. Naturally, in order to satisfy the demand, she needed his correct account number. He provided the account number, and the teller hit the panic button. Neverson fled and entered another bank a couple of doors down the street and tried to hold that bank up. Neverson was arrested, tried, convicted, and is now serving a 2-year sentence. Wisconsin Governor Scott Walker has dropped out of the 2016 GOP presidential nomination race. In his announcement, with a single sentence, he managed to paint himself as a Christ figure, a military leader, a prophet of God, and sacrificial lamb, saying, "I believe I'm being called to lead by helping to clear the field." This is quite possibly the most delusionally optimistic admission of defeat since Richard Nixon's final boarding of Marine One in 1974. As you may recall, back in June, we reported on the Italian neurosurgeon who was seeking ethical approval to perform a human head transplant. Perhaps it should better be referred to as a body transplant, since presumably the identity of the resulting person, assuming prospective patient Valerie Spiridonov survives the procedure, would be that of the head and not of the body. And Spiridonov's old body and the head from the donor body would presumably be disposed of as medical waste. I can't imagine the donor family would be terribly satisfied with paying full price to bury their loved one's head. I suppose they could just duct tape the donor head onto Spiridonov's old body, and they could bury that. GOP presidential dreamer and former neurosurgeon Ben Carson has stated that he believes no Muslim should ever be permitted to be president of the United States because the tenets of the religion require a Muslim president to promote or defer to his or her religion in the affairs of state and could require him or her to lie to achieve their goals. Firstly, I fail to see how this differs from noisy Christians such as himself, Mike Huckabee, Rick Santorum, and so on. And secondly, while Carson says that Sharia is inconsistent with the principles of the Constitution, which is true, so is strict adherence to biblical law. What Carson also fails to realize is that his own attitude toward Muslims is inconsistent with Article 6 of the Constitution, and that's not an amendment. That's part of the original document, which states, "The senators and representatives before mentioned and the members of the several state legislatures and all executive and judicial officers, both of the United States and of the several states, shall be bound by oath or affirmation to support this Constitution, but no religious test shall ever be required as a qualification to any office or public trust under the United States." Turning now to squirrel news, locals in Borneo are convinced that the deer they occasionally find disemboweled in the woods are the result of attacks by a vampire squirrel! Specifically, the Borneo tufted ground squirrel. Like the elusive Sasquatch or Latin America's chupacabra, the Bornean vampire squirrel has never been seen, let alone photographed, in the process of actually vampiring a deer. All anyone has been able to do is catch the squirrel on video, doing squirrel things. But we should not be fooled by this! As we all know, the wisdom of folk tales is infallible and never refuted. I mean, just look at the Bible. Indisputable. As we do from time to time, let's spend a little time with our resident cranky old man, Curmudgeon, in Curmudgeon's Corner. The U.S. Constitution started off pretty okay. Bicameral legislature, checks and balances, 3 branches, all pretty good. Then the Bill of Rights came along. The First, Fourth, Fifth, and Sixth Amendments weren't so bad. I could do without the Second and the Third. The rest, After that, things get a little weird. The 13th makes sense, and the 14th isn't so bad, assuming the logic of the 13th and 14th Amendments. The 15th is obvious, although, given the stupidity that necessitated the 13th and the 14th Amendments, it was probably necessary. The 19th Amendment was similarly obvious and necessary. The 18th Amendment was just plain stupid. So stupid, in fact, that it's the only constitutional amendment to have been repealed. Most of the rest consist mostly of legislative navel-gazing. Why would a document as perfect as the Constitution ever need to be amended? I've never learned anything new since I was born. I've never altered my behavior as the facts of reality have changed over time. By analogy, the Constitution should not, and should not have been, amended. Wait. Chick-fil-A, the unabashedly Christian chicken sandwich chain, hopes to expand into Denver, Colorado's international airport, but the city of Denver isn't too sure it wants their kind there. As you may recall, Chick-fil-A's president, Dan Cathy, had some not-so-inclusive things to say regarding homosexuality and marriage equality back in 2012, and the company caught a lot of heat for that. Well, now the city of Denver is considering not permitting the chain to open a location in its airport over concerns that the company uses its corporate profits to promote an anti-gay agenda. Interestingly, while Denver is generally regarded as one of the most liberal cities in Colorado, when set against liberal strongholds like San Francisco and Portland, Oregon, Denver's conservative colors show a little more distinctly. Amusingly, there are already at least 20 Chick-fil-A locations in the Denver area, and it seems any attempt at keeping the company's Chickens for Bigotry exchange program out of Denver altogether have failed, or never started. But it seems this action will at least allow travelers to get inside the city limits proper before they realize what they've gotten themselves into. And finally, and I do mean finally, we all saw this coming, didn't we? For a long time, people said you couldn't build an efficient, clean, well-performing diesel automobile, and for a long time, those people were right. And it turns out that despite what the fine folks at Volkswagen have been telling us since they really started pushing their TDI cars in the US, maybe the naysayers are still right. Volkswagen got caught having installed software which only imposes legally mandated emissions controls when the computer detects that emission testing is being performed, in as many as 11 million of the diesel cars it has sold worldwide over the last several years. It isn't clear at this point where in Volkswagen's management structure the decision was made, but the CEO, Martin Winterthur, announced that he had no idea what was going on and then resigned. Yeah, that's pretty messed up. But can you imagine if Richard Nixon or George W. Bush had at least as much integrity as Winterthur? Nixon would not have been reelected in '72, and Bush would not have completed his first term. Well, that's that's all for this edition of NewsUndies. If you see news that shouldn't be news, you can submit your story tips online at newsundies.com or on Twitter with the hashtag NUSTip. NewsUndies is a weekly show. We'll be back on Friday, October 2nd with fresh undies. If you like this video, please like this video. If you like the show, please spread the word. Got a question, comment, or suggestion? Leave it in the comments below. Don't forget to subscribe to us on YouTube, like us on Facebook, circle us on Google+, follow us on Twitter, ignore us on MySpace, tell your friends, and buy NewsUndies Kitsch at newsundies.com. Thanks for watching. For all of us here at NewsUndies, until next time, I'm Paul Torville. After that, I might be converting to Islam and running for president just to piss off Ben Carson. Because that's how I roll. Thanks to story tippers Jeff the God of Biscuits and Anonymous. Oh, and hey, if you're in the Providence, Rhode Island area during the weekends of October 16th or October 23rd, why not come to see me and a bunch of my friends put on a production of Arthur Miller's The Crucible? Check out ristage.org for details. I just want to tell you good luck. We're all counting on you.